arrogant boxer forced a young black Jamaican woman to fight in order to humiliate her. Then the unthinkable happened. "Look who's here," Victoria Sterling hissed, pointing at the 18-year-old who had just entered an elite Manhattan gym. "Looks like someone got lost on their way to the gym next door." The sound of punching bags abruptly stopped. All eyes turned to Kesha Campbell, who was clutching a battered gym bag and wearing battered sneakers. Her dark skin stood in stark contrast to the immaculate whiteness of the exclusive surroundings, where the monthly rent cost more than 3 times the minimum wage. Victoria Sterling, the 2-time women's boxing champion, was known for her deadly fists and even sharper tongue. At 26, she had built a career out of social media taunts and outrageous statements that generated millions of views. Her latest Instagram post had already racked up 500,000 likes. A photo of her flexing her muscles was captioned, "When you're naturally superior, you don't have to pretend to be equal." "Sorry," Kesha muttered, checking the address on her cracked cell phone. "I thought this was a youth scholarship program." Victoria's laughter echoed through the gym like a siren. "A scholarship program? Honey, it's not a social project. We train real athletes here, not social experiments." Kesha Campbell had arrived in the United States just 6 months earlier, carrying the dreams of a Jamaican family who had saved every penny to give her a chance. She worked 16-hour days cleaning offices to pay for the room she shared with 3 others in the Bronx. The scholarship program was her only chance to train in a decent place. "There is a program," came a firm voice. Tom Rodriguez, a veteran trainer and gym owner, emerged from his office with a folder in hand. "And Kesha Campbell is approved." Victoria rolled her eyes dramatically. "Seriously, Tom? You're turning my gym into an NGO? My sponsors aren't going to like this at all." "Her sponsors pay for results, not her opinion of who trains here," Tom replied dryly. But Victoria wasn't finished. She walked up to Kesha with a smile that was more like a threat. "You know what? If you want to train with the best so badly, why don't we prove to you that you really deserve to be here?" The gym went silent. Everyone knew what was coming next. "Friendly sparring," Victoria continued, savoring every word. "You versus me, 3 rounds. If you can handle it, you stay. If not..." She waved her hand dismissively. Kesha felt everyone's eyes on her. She knew it was a trap, a public humiliation designed to break her spirit before it even began. But there was a glint in her eyes that Victoria couldn't quite place, and it remained unwavering. "I agree," Kesha said calmly. Victoria frowned, expecting tears or pleading. "Are you sure? Because when I'm done with you, you'll wonder if it's worth dreaming so boldly." "I'm sure," Kesha repeated, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she smiled. What Victoria Sterling didn't know was that she was about to find out why. In the slums of Kingston, Jamaica, Kesha Campbell was known by a very specific nickname, Lightning. And like all lightning, she only showed her true strength when a storm came. While Victoria was already plotting how to turn the humiliation into viral content for her social media, Tom Rodriguez watched the determined glint in Kesha's eyes and felt a familiar chill. The same one he felt when he recognized a truly special talent disguised as an obvious vulnerability. If this story of prejudice and determination touches you, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because what happened in those 3 rounds was so unexpected that even today people wonder how an ordinary young woman from the Bronx managed to rewrite the rules of a sport dominated by the elite. News of the friendly fight spread through the gym like wildfire. In less than an hour, several boxers, trainers, and even sports journalists were on their way. Victoria Sterling versus an unknown Jamaican. It was going to be the kind of brutal entertainment that social media loved to consume. 3 rounds, 160 ounces of gloves, Tom Rodriguez said, trying to downplay the carnage that was about to happen. "No bets, no live stream, just sparring." Victoria laughed. "Tom, relax. This is going to be quick. It probably won't even get to a second round." She was already recording Instagram stories, telling her 2 million followers, "You guys are not going to believe what's going on here. Some random girl wants to challenge me. I'm going to teach her a lesson in humility she'll never forget." The comments started pouring in. "Destroy her, Victoria." These people need to know their place. Show them why you're the queen. While Victoria was basking in the attention, Kesha silently headed to the locker room. Her hands weren't shaking. They never did before a fight, but her heart was beating faster with a mixture of suppressed anger and painful memories she tried to keep buried. Tom followed her. Kesha, you don't have to do this. I know the scholarship program is important, but you shouldn't risk your health because of her arrogance. I won't get hurt, Kesha replied calmly, trying on the borrowed gloves. She's been a world champion for 2 years now. She has professional technique, knockout power, experience. And I have something she'll never have, Kesha interrupted, looking straight into the eyes of the veteran coach. Tom frowned. What? Hunger. The word echoed throughout the modest locker room. Tom Rodriguez had trained hundreds of athletes for 30 years, but he had rarely heard the word uttered with such conviction. There was an intensity in Kesha's eyes that he recognized only in the true predators of the ring. Tell me something, Tom said, sitting down next to her. Why did you accept the challenge? Why didn't you just ignore her taunts? Kesha closed her eyes for a moment. The memories came flooding back. The streets of Kingston, her mother's screams begging her to stop fighting, the feel of fists landing with surgical precision, the nickname Lightning, whispered with fear and respect in the slums. Because I've been through this before, she finally said. People like Victoria think they can break us with words, with contempt, with the certainty of our superiority, but they forget one important thing. What is that? Those who grow up fighting for survival don't just fight for sport, they fight for existence. Tom felt a chill run down his spine. There was something prophetic in those words, as if Kesha were revealing not only her own motivation but also Victoria's fate. Outside, Victoria continued her performance for the cell phone cameras. Look at what she's wearing, she hissed, gesturing toward Kesha's scuffed-up sneakers left in the locker room. I bet she's never even stepped foot in a real ring. She probably learned to box from watching YouTube. Laughter echoed around the gym, but some of the more experienced boxers remained silent. There was something about Kesha's stance, the way she accepted the challenge without hesitation, that evoked an instinctive caution. Marcus Williams, a former middleweight champion who now trained at the gym, whispered to a sparring partner, Damn, I don't know. I've seen that calm before. Sometimes the quietest ones are the most dangerous. Victoria, however, was too caught up in her own arrogance to notice the warning signs. You know what the problem is with people from third-world countries? She continued to address the cameras. They confuse desperation with skill. They think that because life is hard, they automatically know how to fight. At that very moment, Kesha emerged from the locker room, dressed in simple shorts and a tank top that revealed surprisingly defined arms for someone who had allegedly never trained seriously. Her movements were smooth, economical, like a cat preparing to pounce. Ready to learn? Victoria asked sarcastically. Always, Kesha replied. What Victoria Sterling didn't know, and could never have imagined, was that Lightning Campbell had started fighting on the streets of Kingston at the age of 8, not for sport or fun, but because it was either that or starve. By the time she was 12, she was beating boys 3 years her senior in underground fights that brought in enough money to feed her family for another week. By the time she was 16, she was a local legend, not because of her brutality, but because of her uncanny ability to anticipate moves and counter with lightning speed, hence the nickname she wore like a scar of honor. When she finally got a visa to the United States, she vowed to never set foot in a ring again. But some promises are broken when dignity is on the line. Tom adjusted Kesha's gloves, noticing something that surprised him. Her arms were perfectly relaxed, but her muscles had the density of someone who had been training all her life. Kesha, can I ask you something? Of course. Have you really never fought before? Kesha smiled for the first time since arriving at the gym. A small, almost imperceptible smile, but it held secrets that could rewrite the entire situation. Definitely, she replied. At this moment, while Victoria continued her social media performance and the audience mentally placed bets on how long the amateur would last, something extraordinary was about to happen. Because sometimes when we underestimate someone based on appearance and preconceived notions, we discover that the real predators are the ones who have learned to disguise their strength until the very moment it is revealed. While Victoria Sterling continued her campaign of social media humiliation, posting 17 stories, ridiculing the Jamaican amateur, something entirely different was happening behind the scenes at the gym. Tom Rodriguez decided to take a closer look at Kesha Campbell. 30 years of training boxers had taught him that true strength rarely screams. And there was something about this young woman that defied all logic. Her hands didn't have the calluses of a beginner. Her reflexes were too fast. Most importantly, her calm was unnatural for someone about to face a world champion. "Kesha," Tom called as she finished adjusting her gloves. "Can I see you do a few basic moves, just to gauge your level?" What happened in the next 5 minutes made Tom question everything he knew about natural talent. Kesha moved around the ring with a fluidity that seemed to defy gravity. Her punches to the heavy bag had a surgical precision he'd only seen in fighters with decades of experience. "Oh my God," Tom muttered under his breath. "Who is this girl, really?" At that moment, the gym door opened and in walked a man who made Kesha freeze completely. It was Winston Campbell, a 50-year-old man with scars on his arms and eyes that had seen it all. Her uncle, who had flown in from Miami as soon as he heard about the fight through a mutual cousin. "Lightning," Winston had said simply. The nickname echoed around the gym like a gunshot. Several of the older boxers frowned, as if trying to remember where they had heard the name. "Uncle Winston, what are you doing here?" Kesha asked, her voice betraying her nervousness for the first time. "I came to see if my niece had lost her mind," he replied in English with a thick Jamaican accent. "I thought we agreed those days were behind us." Tom approached, intrigued. "Do you two know each other?" Winston looked at Tom with the expression of a man deciding how much truth to reveal. "I've known this girl since she was 8 years old, and I can assure you that Victoria Sterling has no idea what she's about to get into." While this conversation was happening in the corner of the ring, Victoria was on the other side of the gym, recording new content for TikTok. "Guys, look at this," she whispered to the camera. She even brought her family along to watch her get humiliated. How cute, right? They'll have something to comfort her with later. The comments under her posts exploded. "Victoria is going to destroy this girl. Teach her not to mess with Americans. Show her what real boxing is." Winston stared at Victoria for a few seconds, then shook his head in disgust. Arrogant. Just the kind Lightning was used to. Well, let's just say he taught humility on the streets of Kingston. "Uncle, please," Kesha begged. "Don't tell anyone. I don't want anyone to know." "Know what?" Tom asked, growing more curious. Winston took a deep breath. "Tom, can I call you that? You seem like a decent man. Now, let me tell you something that might change the way you look at this fight." He pointed at Kesha, now training alone in the corner. The girl there was considered the best street fighter Kingston had ever produced. "Street fighter," Tom repeated. At 12, she was beating men 3 times her size. By 15, she had a reputation that made gangsters respect her. Lightning Campbell was more than a nickname. It was a warning. Winston paused. She stopped fighting when she got her visa to come here. She swore she'd never step foot in the ring again. Tom looked at Kesha with new eyes. Then why did she agree to fight Victoria? "Because," Winston said, "some people confuse kindness with weakness, and Lightning has never tolerated being underestimated because of her color, gender, or background." Across the gym, Victoria finished another series of posts mocking Kesha and was now on the phone with her manager. "Michael, this is going to go viral. World champion versus amateur. This is the kind of content sponsors love. Total dominance." "Just try not to hurt her too much, Victoria," the manager's voice said over the speakerphone. "We don't want any personal injury lawsuits." Victoria laughed out loud. "Michael, relax. It'll be so quick, she won't have time to hurt herself." "Seriously?" Winston overheard this conversation and his eyes narrowed. "Tom, can I give you some advice?" "Bet on Lightning." "Why?" "Because Victoria Sterling may be a world champion, but she's never fought to survive. She's never faced someone who knew that losing meant not eating. Lightning isn't here to look good. She's here to prove a point." At that moment, Kesha walked up to them, sweat pouring down her face from an intense workout. "Uncle Winston, what are you telling Tom?" "The truth, baby. That you're not the helpless victim that this American thinks you are." Kesha glanced around the gym, noticing that some of the other boxers were now looking at her with newfound curiosity and respect. Uncle, I really don't want to. Don't want what? To show them who you really are. Lightning? You've been cleaning toilets for the last few months because you wanted to start a new life. But when someone tries to humiliate you because of your color, your background, your past, no new life can erase what's in your blood. Tom felt a chill. Kesha, can I ask you something? Why did you actually agree to this fight? Kesha was silent for a long moment, looking at Victoria, who continued recording content from the other side of the gym. When she finally spoke, there was a sharpness in her voice that Tom had never heard before. Because people like Victoria Sterling think they can take us down, humiliate us, put us in our place, based solely on the color of our skin or where we come from. She looked at me and saw an easy target, a story for her social media, a joke to entertain her followers. Kesha paused. She doesn't know that where I grew up, respect isn't given, it's earned. And when someone tries to take away our dignity, she smiled. But there was something predatory in that smile. Well, sometimes lightning is meant to remind people why thunderstorms are scary. In that moment, as Victoria Sterling continued her arrogant performance for the cameras, completely unaware of the conversation that was changing everything just a few feet away, everyone in the gym knew they were about to witness something much more than just a friendly fight. It was the moment when years of silent humiliation would finally find a voice in the fists of someone who had learned on the toughest streets in the world. That sometimes the only language certain people understand is the language of force, applied with surgical precision. The bell rang, and the two fighters met in the center of the ring. Victoria immediately went on the offensive, throwing a flurry of fast jabs that cut through the air where Kesha had been a second ago. "What the hell?" Victoria muttered, frowning as she saw her punches hit empty air. Kesha moved like smoke, always one step ahead, always out of reach. Her feet glided across the canvas with a fluidity that defied physics, as if she could predict every move before Victoria even thought of it. "Stay still, girl," Victoria yelled in frustration, increasing the force of her punches. Then it happened. Just as Victoria lost her balance after a poorly timed cross, Kesha countered. Her left fist connected with Victoria's side with a sharp sound that echoed throughout the gym. Victoria staggered back, touching her face in disbelief. She had never been hit so accurately by a smaller opponent. "Impossible," she whispered, but Kesha was already moving again. The ensuing display of martial arts left the gym in total silence. Kesha wasn't just fighting, she was orchestrating a symphony of controlled violence. Every punch was calculated, every move had a purpose, every avoidance seemed choreographed. Victoria, desperate, tried to use her advantage in weight and reach, but it was like trying to catch lightning with her hands. For every punch she threw, she got 3 in return. For every advance she made, Kesha had already anticipated and countered. "Who's that girl?" someone in the audience shouted. Winston smiled as he watched. "Lightning Campbell," he purred proudly. The moment of truth came in the second round. Victoria, now out of breath and with a mark on her face, knew she had made the biggest mistake of her career. Her arrogant social media posts continued to spread, but now the tone of the comments had completely changed. Victoria was being beaten by an amateur. Where was the world champion? This Jamaican was destroying her. Jerry, her manager, was shouting frantic instructions from the corner, but Victoria could barely hear him over the roar of the crowd, which was now openly rooting against her. That was when Kesha decided to show her true colors. "Lightning was never just a nickname," she said calmly, walking toward Victoria, who was retreating toward the ropes. It was a warning. The next combination was so fast that cell phone cameras could barely capture it. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. 4 punches in less than 2 seconds. All of them hit their mark with surgical precision. Victoria fell to the canvas like a destroyed building. The gym exploded. People were screaming, clapping, filming everything on social media. Victoria tried to get up, but her legs wouldn't obey her. For the first time in her life, the undefeated world champion had been knocked out by someone she called a social project. 10, shouted Tom, the referee. Knockout. Kesha calmly walked to the corner where Victoria was being treated. You said you wanted to teach me a lesson, she said quietly. I hope you realize that respect is not earned by the color of your skin, your nationality, or your bank account. It is earned by character. Victoria looked at Kesha with eyes full of humiliation, and for the first time, something resembling respect flickered in them. Jerry rushed to check Victoria's phone. Her stories mocking Kesha had gone viral, but now for entirely different reasons. Thousands of comments mocked her arrogance. Victoria destroyed by a man she called an amateur. This is what happens when prejudice collides with reality. Lightning Campbell ended Victoria's career in 3 rounds. Oh my God, Victoria, Jerry said, showing her his phone. You have to see this. Your account has lost 100,000 followers in the last hour. Sponsors are tearing up their contracts. Victoria picked up the phone with trembling hands. Her last post mocking Kesha had become a monument to her own humiliation. The comments were merciless. He who laughs last, laughs best. The Jamaican taught the racist a lesson. Lightning Campbell, arrogant Victoria. Tom approached Kesha, who was being cheered by the entire room. Lightning, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you tell them who you really were from the start? Kesha looked at Victoria, who was still being helped up, completely defeated physically and emotionally. Because sometimes people have to dig their own grave before they realize how deep it is. Winston proudly hugged his niece. You're still Lightning? No, Uncle, Kesha replied, watching Victoria being escorted out of the gym amid a barrage of sarcastic remarks. Lightning is who I needed to be to survive. Today, I showed who I really am. A person who does not tolerate disrespect, but fights for dignity, not violence. As the cameras rolled, the video of the knockout went viral on social media, and a question hung in the air. Could one fight rewrite not only the careers of 2 athletes, but an entire community's attitudes toward prejudice, privilege, and the true measure of human strength? 3 months later, the contrast could not be more stark. Victoria Sterling, the once undefeated world champion, sat in the modest apartment she had rented after losing her Miami mansion. Her sponsors had dropped her after the viral video racked up 50 million views in a week. Victoria Sterling's destruction by a woman she called an amateur became the biggest meme of the year, turning her arrogance into a global joke. Nike, Adidas, Gatorade, all the brands that once paid her millions to represent her, now refused to return her calls. Jerry, her former manager, was blunt in their final conversation. Victoria, you don't understand. This isn't just about losing a fight. This is who you've come to represent yourself to. No one wants to associate their brand with prejudice and arrogance. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, Kesha Campbell was signing her first professional contract with Golden Gloves Promotions. The deal was $2 million for her first 3 fights, with an extension that could reach $50 million if she kept up her form. Lightning Campbell had become not just a sporting phenomenon, but a symbol of resilience. Brands that valued authenticity and overcoming adversity lined up to sponsor her. Under Armour launched an entire line inspired by her story. Earned, not given. Tom Rodriguez was sitting in the office at his gym when he got an unexpected call. Hello, Tom. This is ESPN. We're going to do a documentary about how you discovered Lightning Campbell. I didn't discover anything, Tom answered honestly. She always knew who she was. She just needed someone to respect her before they could see her fists in action. The gym's transformation had also been dramatic. The scholarship program, once a modest endeavor, was now receiving donations from across the country. Young people from disadvantaged communities were arriving daily. Inspired by Kesha's story, the waiting list numbered more than 500 names. Winston Campbell visited his niece regularly, always with the same pride shining in his eyes. Remember what I said about hunger? He asked during one visit. You've proven that it's not where we come from, it's the fire we carry inside. Victoria herself had tried to reinvent herself several times. She created a YouTube channel with an apology, but the comments were relentless. She tried to return to boxing, but no major promoter would accept her terms. Her savings quickly evaporated without sponsorship income. In a desperate interview for a third-rate podcast, Victoria finally said the words she should have said months earlier. I was so wrong. Kesha Campbell wasn't just an exceptional fighter. She was someone I should have respected from the start. My prejudices blinded me to her greatness. But the internet has a long memory. The clip became a meme once again. Victoria trying to apologize after losing everything. Kesha, hearing about the interview, showed the class that has always distinguished her. "I don't hold any anger toward her," she told Sports Illustrated. "Anger eats up those who carry it. I'd rather use my energy to build bridges for other young women like me." Her foundation, Lightning Dreams, has already helped 300 young women from disadvantaged communities gain scholarships and athletic opportunities. The foundation's first gym was set to open in Kingston, Jamaica, the same community where she discovered her fists could be more than just survival weapons. During the opening ceremony, broadcast live around the world, Kesha held the microphone with the same hands that knocked out a world champion. "This story is not about revenge," she said, her voice booming over the speakers. "This is about dignity. This is about proving that respect is not earned by privilege, but by character." The audience erupted in applause. But she wasn't done. "Victoria Sterling gave me the greatest gift of her life. She underestimated me. And when someone underestimates you, you have a choice. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it as fuel to become unstoppable." Tom Rodriguez, watching from the front row, wiped away a hidden tear. He had trained champions for decades, but he had never seen someone turn humiliation into inspiration with such elegance. Months later, when Lightning Campbell became the unified world champion by knocking out her opponent in the second round, the same round she beat Victoria in, the first person she thanked in her acceptance speech was not her coach or her family. "I want to thank all the people who tried to put me down and make me feel bad and put me in my place. You taught me that true strength doesn't come from where we're born or the color of our skin. It comes from an absolute refusal to accept that others define our limits." Victoria Sterling watched the fight on TV in her rented apartment alone. When the referee raised Kesha's hand, declaring her the new champion of the world, Victoria finally understood the difference between talent and greatness. A person can be born with talent, but greatness is forged in the crucible of adversity. Kesha Campbell didn't just win a fight in that Manhattan gym. She rewrote the rules of what it means to be strong, what it means to deserve respect, and, most importantly, how the best revenge isn't to destroy your enemy. It's to become everything they think you can never be. And while Lightning Campbell shone in the spotlight of the world, proving that some storms do not destroy, but rather purify and strengthen. A lesson that repeats itself for anyone who has ever been underestimated, humiliated, or belittled. Never let someone define your limits based on prejudice. The greatest victory is to prove them completely wrong about who you really are. If this story of transformation and justice touched your heart, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that sometimes being underestimated is exactly the advantage we need to effectively rewrite our own narrative.